Will you still believe in God if all you had was taken from you? Do you know what it really means to live as a well-known rich man and in the same lifetime, live as a well-known God-forsaken man? Well, I do. I know and have lived through all these experiences. You might be asking who I am. I am Job. Yes, the man who lived two opposite life experiences in a lifetime. Let me tell you my story. I was the richest man in the land of Uz, and simultaneously in the East I was deemed upright, perfect, and wise in the eyes of men. I feared God and obeyed his laws and shunned evil. In those days, the net worth of a man was calculated in physical assets, slaves, and animals. So in my day, my net worth was 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 yokes of oxen, 500 she-asses, and a very great household with a lot of slaves who made sure my houses and businesses ran smoothly. I also had precious jewels, which were my children. I have 7 sons and 3 daughters. I feared God so much that I made sure my children were purified when they held a feast, as it was their usual occasion, and also made sacrifices for each of them, just in case they sinned against God in thoughts or actions during their feast. Just when I thought my life was perfect and satisfying, and there was nothing a man could seek anymore. On a fateful day, as my children were feasting in their elder brother's house, one of my messengers came to me and said all my oxen and asses were all taken as they were plowing and feeding together, and they killed all the servants with them. Just as he was speaking, another messenger came and said, "The fire of God fell from heaven and consumed all my sheep and the servants that were with them." While he was still reporting this to me, another messenger came in with yet another bad news. He said that the Chaldeans came in 3 bands and fell upon my camels and stole them all, killing all the servants with them. While this messenger was yet speaking, another messenger came in with news that broke the camel's back. He said, while my children were feasting, eating and drinking and making merry in their elder brother's house, there arose a sudden great wind from the wilderness and smote the 4 corners of the house, and the house collapsed with my children inside, and they all died. I was broken, shattered, and in severe pain. In this pain I tore my robe, shaved my head, fell to the ground, and worshipped God, trying to console myself by saying, "Out of my mother's womb I came naked, and I will return naked. The Lord gives and takes." I was broken. My worst nightmare became a reality. As if this wasn't enough, I began to live with sore boils on my flesh, from the top of my head down to the sole of my foot. It was so unbearable that I had to use a piece of a broken pot to scrap myself. The itchiness and pain was so unbearable. In all these, my wife, who was with me, seeing all my pain and my life drowning in agony, said to me, her words were, "Will I still retain my integrity? Why not curse God and die?" But I shunned her. She spoke like a foolish woman, I told her. Shall we receive good from God and not receive evil also? In all these, I tried to shun myself from sinning against God or blaming him for my misfortune. I had friends, Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar, who made arrangements to come and comfort and mourn with me after hearing all my predicament. My life had turned for the worse, so much so that when my friends saw me from afar, they could barely recognize me. They cried aloud, rent their mantles, and poured dust on their heads, and sat with me for 7 days and 7 nights, and none spoke a word because they couldn't believe their eyes. Neither did they have the words to console me at that time. They saw how great my grief was. I was so pained and annoyed at the whole issue that the moment I opened my mouth, I cursed the day I was born. With so much pain, I cursed my day of birth. Not only that, I began to question everything. I began to question the process of life, saying I wish the day I was born never existed. And the night it was said, "A man-child is conceived," should be plunged into darkness. Let it be a day of despair, unacknowledged by God, with darkness and death's shadow covering it. May it be filled with terror and solitude, cursed by those who curse the day. Let its stars be darkened, longing for light but finding none. For it did not close the doors of my mother's womb or hide my sorrow. I cursed my existence, questioning why I didn't perish at birth or in the womb, why I was allowed to suffer. I wished for rest among kings and counselors, or as a stillborn infant escaping life's trials. There the wicked cease to trouble and the weary find peace. Why grant light to those in misery, longing for death but finding none? Why give life to the bitter in the soul? My sighs precede my meals and my cries pour out like water. What I feared most befell me, and despite seeking safety, trouble found me. I was in so much pain and I needed answers to all the questions in my head. I ached for answers, and then I got answers from my friends. After speaking these words, my friends who had been with me for 7 days began to comfort me and also give their opinion about the matter. They strongly believed I was flawed somewhere, and God, who sees everything, had found my fault and was punishing me for it. They believed calamity only befalls the wicked, in which I was not entirely innocent. They even urged me to dig into my life and find out where I had made a mistake and spit it out and therefore ask for mercy. They were men of mortal wisdom who acknowledged the supreme being and the supremacy of his wisdom about human comprehension. Eliphaz drew a conclusion that I was being punished for something I did somewhere along the course of my life. To this idea, Bildad and Zophar agreed and urged me to seek God's mercy and favor. Bildad believed that my children brought death upon themselves. They questioned and I answered them. I answered them ever so diligently that they thought I was self-righteous. And they questioned me further, even with deep human wisdom and reasoning to which I provided answers. I also spoke to them in the heat of the situation. I asked them, will they judge in God's stead? Will they deem me righteous in God's stead? I said, you have beaten me with lies and false assumptions. If only you had been quiet about the situation, you wouldn't have made such a mistake of assuming false things against me. I needed answers to my questions. I spoke to my friends in riddles and parables, explaining and questioning them. All I wanted was to meet with God and ask him these questions. He should know what I did wrong and tell me why I deserve such a rash treatment all of a sudden. Why would I, who tries daily to be righteous and upright before God, be severely reprimanded and forsaken so much so that all forms of lively gestures, I lacked happiness? I made my case before God, demanding God to relieve me of the pains and call me to his court and tell me if I am found wanting. I begged for relief from this pains. I was in pain all round, from the pain of feeling forsaken by my Creator, to the mental pain, dealing with grief and depression and also not knowing why all these have befallen me, down to the most irritating pain. It was my sore boils. I became an outcast in the society. People pitied me and mocked me as I sat at the ash heap at the end of the village. After asking God about 36 times to speak to me, he finally did, but none of my questions were answered. Instead, he replied to me starting with an opening question in Job chapter 38 verses 2 and 3. Who is this that darkens my counsel with words without knowledge? Verse 3. Brace yourself like a man. I will question you, and you shall answer me. Then he began to ask me questions that were impossible for me to have answers to, even questions containing the very process of creation. He asked me if I was present when the earth's foundation was laid, if I knew who drew the measuring line. God began to give me a review of all the activities only God can perform. To all these questions, I was speechless with my hands covering my mouth. After he had questioned me, I found myself so little before him and repented of my words and questions. God also instructed my friends to sacrifice a burnt offering and that I should pray for them because they spoke without wisdom. They were punished by God because they spoke inaccurately about him. After all these, God restored unto me double of what I had when I prayed for my friends. He blessed me with twice as much as I had, and all my acquaintances came and ate with me, all giving me money and a gold ring. And I now had 14,000 sheep, 6,000 camels, 1,000 oxen, and she-asses each. God also blessed me with 7 sons and 3 beautiful daughters. God blessed the later part of my life twice as much. If you enjoyed this story, kindly like and subscribe to this channel. God bless you.